Welcome back, fellow armchair generals and railway enthusiasts. This is Gamer 1745 with my continuing playthrough of Railway Empire, taking a look at Great Britain with my good friend IKB. Say hi, IKB.
Hello, everyone.
And he's going to be giving color commentary and advice on development of what's going on as we play this. So if you haven't already, if you're new here, please subscribe to the channel. Tell a friend about the channel. You don't know how important that is. We love to get our history and thoughts out to a wider audience. And of course, if you have questions, you can post them below and we will try to answer them in a future episode, unless maybe a short, quick answer can be done. Just we're applying to your question in text form, but we will be checking those. Okay, so we're going to continue this. We are continuing to need to move down to London, and we are still limited on our areas that we can operate in. Okay, breakdown, bad condition. What is your railway path between here and there? And probably neither of them has. Okay, this is fairly busy, so let's build a
maintenance facility.
Yeah, get some maintenance there going. I like to play as the character, the dock, whatever, that gives you free maintenance buildings and cheaper. Yes. I like that better than any of the other features. Okay, no, we won't fire our current accountant for another one who looks almost the same, with the same, well, no, different thing, but they work together, so we'll keep that.
We'll keep the current setup in head office.
Yes. You can see them struggling up at 3 miles per hour over this bridge. That's why this one's looked out, that we had a straight across.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, okay, it might only be doing 3 miles per hour, but that's 3 miles per hour pulling, how many tons?
Right.
How many horses would you need to move that? And even then, the horse is probably, if a horse is pulling a load, it's probably not going to be doing much more than 3 miles per hour as is. So.
And how many people are having to handle those horses constantly?
Feed those horses, etc., etc.
What is keeping it going forward? This guy here? Oh, yes, it is. Okay, they're broken down. Now here, okay, we're going to also do a maintenance thing here.
Now, of course, oddly enough, the coming of the railways did not put all of the horses out of work, because there were an awful lot of horses that were owned and used by the railways as particularly to move wagons around for shunting purposes in the railway yards to put trains together.
Okay.
Because especially if
I hadn't thought about that, but yeah.
Especially out at smaller country stations, you don't have the facilities or the need to have a designated shunting locomotive, but you could, but it's much easier to just have a horse that can as if you're only moving one wagon around at the time just to rearrange the trains.
Okay, what I think we're going to do here is let's do a train from Liverpool to Oxford, a sort of a direct or non-stop, and we're going to go for a ride on it.
Yep.
As soon as we can, as soon as we get to free. See how that goes. Maybe we should expand this station. Yeah, just not enough room for a proper longer one with the switching controls.
Have a
Okay, well, I want to look, see. Okay, 100. Oh yeah, this is just way busy. Maybe we should put a second station here or something. Or
can we Is there any way we can upgrade it and still make things fit?
We can. Well, okay. Before we start this, let's do this. We have the money here, so let's come here and go to the expanded station. But we need to still go through. But we need to. Let's see. Let's put this out here. This is. I don't like doing this after getting used to the better.
If it's ugly, but it works, it ain't ugly.
Well, I still think it's ugly. Okay, let's. Not that we really need this side of that, but what we need is that, and then what we need is. Let's get rid of that. I hear you, but this is. You know.
I might just need to wait for the train to move off it.
I don't. Maybe we do, but I think it's more of.
And it probably doesn't really. It probably does not like the idea of putting a set of points on the curve.
Yeah, I think it may be the curve more so than the train actually being there. Okay.
There we go. Okay.
Well, that isn't working. Okay.
You might just have to have. Now the train's gone sideways.
Yeah, that's a graphical display problem here.
You might just be better off with getting one instead of having the two crossovers right on top of each other. It might be worth it to have the crossover from left to right, and then a little bit further down have the crossover from right to left.
Yeah.
It won't be quite as compact, but it will be a lot more. It will.
Okay.
Go there, and then
Well.
from the middle track to the bottom track, back down.
Okay. Well, do we need one? Okay. Examine this with me. Okay, if you're coming this way, you can go all the way over to here, and if you're here, you can go all the way to there, and if you're on this track, you can come
to all of them.
Yeah, I think we're all connected through here.
All connected. Yep.
Okay, and then so we want to come here and add this going that way, and add another one out here, and maybe move those. Okay, and so my goal is things going to Liverpool here, this side of it, move it to track like 4
or 3.
Right, to decongest the 2 that are through tracks. Let's see this. Can we? Okay, this is going to sort of be messed up here a little bit, but let's move that to 3. Okay, so that will at least alleviate some of the congestion there. Okay, but I want to get on this. It'll be a small train. Let's take a ride along. Okay, let's see how good or bad the congestion is.
Yep. Now, of course, if you were a gentleman of high social standing, and you had your own carriage, and you had enough money, you could pay to have your horse, and you could pay to have your own horse-drawn carriage put on a train, so that you could, on your way from your country estates back down to London or Oxford, you could take your own horse-drawn carriage with you and have it offloaded at the far end, so that you had your, you could then travel in the luxury of your own, your own pre-existing horse-drawn carriage,
Right.
strapped down to a flatbed car, and then
Yeah.
when you get to the far end, you've already got your horse-drawn carriage there to continue, traveling about.
That makes sense. What are we waiting for? Hold on. Let's pause this. Come out. Okay. That's part of what? It's fun to go on the ride-alongs, but what are we? Okay, it's a broken down, random breakdown. But we can add a couple of more signals here that would give us cushion, because what we don't want is another train here that maybe is only going to Wrexham.
Yeah.
Being delayed by us. So let's see if
you want to ideally have your in the railway world we would call them track blocks, as ideally you would want them to be as short as practicable, so that you can fit as many trains into your per mile of track, to get the most trains per mile.
Right, because
while still maintaining sufficient separation for safety reasons.
Right, because so he's repaired, and he's going on, which is good.
They've obviously dealt with the whatever issue he was having, be it hot axle box or something like that, which is still a problem that can occur today in terms of having your lubrication on your axles fail, which is never a good thing. And it's not the worst thing that can happen, but it does tend to result in especially at this time with a lot of carriages and wagons being made out of wood, if you have a overheating axle box, not only are you at risk of that overheating and then seizing solid, but then also at risk of the heat it generates setting the train on fire.
Right. Yeah, that would be a problem.
Yes.
Burning trains are not a pleasant thing to be on.
Oh.
I'm not even sure what town we're coming to here.
Another thing, that's the one thing I think it would be, that's the other thing I think, that makes me, reminisce about playing, Railroad Tycoon 3, is that when you were doing a ride along in that game, they had the names of the towns are sort of big floating letters above each of them. So
well, notice here, we can barely see it. It is, Birmingham, I think. Because there is,
so, yeah.
Yeah, it is on the train station itself. So
it's on
you
the train stations, but it does definitely benefit from having them as your giant floating letters above each one.
Yeah, no, I can see how that would be. Absolutely, look behind us.
And I'm reasonably certain that would be something that you could switch off in the settings if you really didn't like it.
All right.
Yes.
So the only major delay we found was because of a breakdown, a random breakdown actually. So
yes, which
that's good news.
That's good news, and at this point in time, trains were not anywhere near as reliable as they are today.
Right. Yeah, we expect reliability out of things.
Yeah, whereas considering at this time, your sort of machining tolerances and clearances are still still nowhere near as tight as they are on modern equipment, and there's an awful lot of things being hand fitted per even locomotives that are ostensibly built to the same design. There will be differences in terms of you know, at this time, you still would probably find it very, very difficult, if not impossible, to take apart from one locomotive and make it and have it fit perfectly on another one of the same design.
Right.
You would have to spend, you would definitely have to spend some time there with a file and some engineer's blue or something, working out, okay, this is where things are a bit too high, and then filing that bit down, and then
Right.
and maybe adding lots of packing in between in the form of gaskets and such.
Right. Okay. We made it to Oxford, so that's good. And you're very right in that the fitting from one to the other. But again, going back to connections, they talked about what it took to make a steam engine, and one of the things that it took to be able to make a steam engine work is the British ability, because they were the first ones to do it, to solid cast their cannon barrels and then bore out
Yes.
the bore of the gun instead of having that cast, into it, and that is and do it fairly precisely with a horizontal drill. And that is started in the 1770s. And that, because they had before a very primitive steam engine for pumping water out of mines prior to that. But there was the biggest problem with that was tolerances
Yeah.
and getting that going. And so by being able to bore out what, not cannon barrels, but steam cylinders, and have that a tight enough tolerance, even though you probably still, like you say, have to fit it, allowed steam engines to be able to work at a significant capability for the first time.
Yes. That is something new. Railway workshops do have quite impressive capabilities in terms of what they're able to cast, and the amount of things they are able to make.
I'm checking currently our wheat. Okay, they need more wheat in Manchester. In Liverpool, I know they have 2 trains, but they still need more. So we're going to just currently add 1 more train to Manchester. Let's see, we're going to specify that track just because the other one seems to be getting all the business. Okay, so that is helping with the wheat situation in that direction. Now, down here in Birmingham, okay, they barely need wheat because they're not growing much, but they're going to grow and they're going to want more, and they're not getting any. So we can come here. Let's build a warehouse with signaling control because we have the space for it out here. That looks...
That'll give us plenty of room for Birmingham to grow.
Yeah. And yeah, let's connect this. See if we can connect that. Okay, with only a 2% grade.
Yeah,
I think that'd be good. Okay, so that way we've connected that up. Shift these signals to here. Okay, good. The supply tower is there. So let's come here and add wheat as a deliverable, or however they want to accept deliveries.
Something that they're going to demand from the system, and then shall we have a look around the map and check each town and city and see what whether it's demanding any new goods, and work out how to keep the supplies of those flowing.
Yeah, I think we will, but I'm sort of still looking at this wheat here. Okay, because Northampton, what we want to do is one of these big warehouse things, but can't do it right over the river. So, guess we could do it there. Oh, come on, fit. Okay,
There
we
we
could
go.
fit there. Okay, so right. Okay, we want to do that, but we're also going to want to get Peterborough in there.
Let's
So
see,
I want that to be on,
on the flattened level.
yeah, more so, because I could. Speed of train, I think, is specifically more important in this game, and generally speaking, for passengers.
Yes, because of
Where-
course, at this time, this is in terms of railways shrinking the world. This is the first time that it becomes possible to travel from journeys that previously would have taken days or weeks are now doable in hours, or maybe a day's, if you're going a long way, maybe a day's traveling on an early train that's not going at breakneck speeds yet, but still
Well,
it does
and
start to tie. It does start to tie the country together a lot more.
because you talk about this, and I know I keep going back to Connections because I've been rewatching it, and there's a lot of profound, really profound, and it's something that again I want everybody to watch the Connection series, and I don't know how hard it is for people to watch it in your area, but you need to. It's a lot of profound things because, and it's definitely starting with the railways, and they talk about this a bit. There's one thing that I don't know that, and I don't even think UIKB have really even thought of, that railways, but other things also have changed, how dramatically they've changed us, including changed our genetics. Because before, you literally married the person almost literally next door, where now you can marry someone from the next town commonly, in Britain, in America. And yeah, there were Europeans traveling to North America on the ships prior to railroads, most assuredly. But once you got to America, yeah, then they would sort of jump to other communities. So there was some of that, but still, but if you look at for what 150 years of America, while it was still a British possession, it was sort of like Britain over there. People weren't changing so much once they got here. And so this is really a fundamental change in our genetics by all this transporting of people around the world.
Yes, and you get a lot more mixing in the gene pool, so to speak.
Right. Yes, and that is why literally we're talking about changing us on a genetic level.
Yes, it does.
Okay, let's see how we can do it with this bridge here. A little better. Okay, that's terrible. Okay, that's 7%. That's sort of livable.
That's a little bit more.
Okay, let's see. Does that? No, that doesn't. Well, no, that doesn't help.
Ideally, you'd want to sort of trail that embankment up to the bridge out over a.
Okay, I think a 5 and a 3 is better than a 2 and a 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
5 and a 3 does seem better. Can we get anything more for? Can we?
No, I don't think so.
Any down with some more playing around or not?
Well, we could remove these tracks and lay them and push them deeper, but I don't know that that's going to help that much without creating another problem.
And then that goes back into the idea that you wanted to try and keep the passenger lines flat, and it starts to defeat the object. So,
because we are coming down the hill here, and that's sort of why I did run this into the valley a bit here to get a that obviously means both downward and upward shot at that. But okay, I think that is about the best we can do for this. I do like the design aspect and trying to work these things out with this game.
Which does very much reflect, real life, because with where I've been working on the railways, they do, very much in places follow the contours of the land. And I do reckon part of the reason why railways were so quickly accepted by people was the fact that because they were following the contours of the land, and therefore they didn't have quite so many, straight lines. As they say, God's never built in straight lines. It maybe gave the impression to people that, no, this is a bit more natural, and then after a few generations, naturally people just forget it and think it's always been there.
Right.
But it does, that's the one thing with, another one of the tricks I think people have missed with trying to sell sort of ideas of, building new high-speed lines and stuff, is the fact that they're always showing these, like I'm certain I've mentioned this in previous episodes, they always show these nice computer renders of, quite brilliant, shiny new modern bridges and such, and you do sort of look at it and go, maybe part of the reason why people are so objecting to new construction so heavily is because they're worried that it's going to completely clash with the local scenery. Whereas if you're a little bit more sympathetic to the local, within the range of engineering considerations you're going to have to make, if you're a little bit more sympathetic to the local environment you're working in, you might be able to get people more on board with things.
Right, and that's a big thing, and you're talking about like God doesn't build in straight lines and whatnot, and which sort of Romans built in straight lines, particularly their roads.
Yeah,
and that was because and I can't go into the details of it right offhand, but that was because of their surveying equipment was not able to do curves.
yeah.
So obviously there are curves in Roman roads, but that has to, shall we say, be done by eye or whatever, however you're doing it. But they're most advanced probably on the planet. I don't know exactly what was happening in India or China at the time, but I'm pretty sure more advanced than India, probably more advanced than China. But their survey equipment was some of the most advanced, definitely the most advanced in the greater Mediterranean world. And it was very good, but it just their technique, and I can't explain exactly how theirs worked and why it wouldn't, but it wouldn't do, they couldn't survey bends or corners. So they would do everything as much as possible with a straight line, and then curve where they had to, when they had to do one, but do it and get it over with, and then go back to a straight line. And that's just an interesting fact. It was not so much that they hated curves. They didn't want to follow the contours of lands. They just couldn't survey for it.
There is you can still, when you're driving around England, you can still tell which roads are following the routes of things built by the Romans, because they are very straight for a very long way.
Right. And it goes, those echoes still go to this day, like as you're saying. And
so the Foss, the Roman road, the Foss Way, through sort of what is now Somerset. That's still one of the main roads.
Right.
It's still, it's obviously been rebuilt and upgraded many times over the years, but the route is still basically the same as what the Romans built.
So that is, in my opinion,
that's now sort of the problem we're running into with trying to upgrade the railways that we have in the UK, is that there is only so much you can do with upgrading what is already there, because you are facing limitations on space and even with tilting trains, there is only so fast you can make things go round so tight of a
Mhm.
curve in the track before they will just fly off, because
Okay, yeah.
centrifugal force is a thing.
Yes, it is. We're going to spend some more, because we're starting to run enough trains over long enough distance that we're needing better. We have 2 breakdowns for bad conditions, so we need more. Maintenance buildings.
Because looking after a steam locomotive is, I reckon, is probably more labor intensive than looking after a horse in some aspects.
Yeah, I can see that, but it's how much the steam locomotive can move versus even
What the
four
horse can.
horses or something that a human can readily manage 4 horses in the whole if I'm feeding, brushing them down, harnessing them up, unharnessing them, being on the wagon, handling one human, 4 horses, pretty doable as a thing. Getting beyond that, yeah, it's doable, but it's getting more and more difficult. So 4 horses is like one moderately heavy wagon, and as you say before, what's the speed that is moving at compared to the speed that the trains will be moving in?
Yes, because I do believe I remember watching someone that the original measurement for horsepower was based on how long it took one horse to pull a loaded mine tub up a mine shaft with like a pit head gear, with the rope going over the top of the pulley at the top and then being attached to the back of the horse's harness. And it was how long it took, the measurement for a horsepower was worked out as how long it would take your average horse to pull that much weight up that length of mine shaft.
Very interesting. I've never heard
That
it.
was one of
was
the original methods for working out how much, for giving you a measurement of horsepower.
Oh, I totally believe you. Yeah, and I just had never even heard it put it that way. But that is like a measurable thing, because I don't know. Let's just say it's 100 pounds or whatever for that moving, and I could see how you could recalculate that. I mean, I'm not good enough to do the math, but into sort of
Double the weight.
Pounds versus speed over land and whatnot to come up with all of that. Yes, I do see that.
Double the weight, you're going to need double your number of horses.
Right. For whatever you're doing for the engine. Okay, so let's see. We also want to get Oxford into the wheat network.
Yes, because the the old boys down at Oxford University still need to eat.
Yeah, they do.
You might have to remind them to eat while they're doing if they're busy studying and revising for their exams, but they still need to.
Yeah. Okay. Because I'm pretty sure I've never been to Oxford, but I've watched a lot of the TV series Morris, and then the later Lewis TV series. I've seen all of them. It's a very beautiful town, and I really love the way it's the architecture that it's done. And unlike, shall we say, something like Parliament, that architecture was like that way because that's the architecture of the time that when it was built.
Yes, as opposed to the Houses of Parliament in Britain, which weren't. It wasn't the Houses of Parliament we currently have at this time, because those weren't built until after Queen Victoria was on the throne and had married Prince Albert.
Right, and then had a fire that burnt them down.
And then had a fire that burnt them down.
Yes, and so, and then they sort of overdo it in the sort of, I don't know, what is it, a neo-Gothic or whatever you want to call it.
They do crank the dial up to 11.
Yeah, and so they do crank that up to 11, but what they definitely do when they rebuild it is, at least to that modern age, which is a bit closer and similar to our modern age, build it for a modern living style, having hallways instead of one room connecting to the next room to the next room. So you have to pass through everybody's room to get to other rooms. Because if you look at 17th century architecture, that's the way a lot of it is. You've got a bedroom, but somebody needs to come through your bedroom to get to the next room. So it's.
I've visited a few friends who have got older houses, and you do sometimes get that feeling of having to go through going through rooms to get to other rooms rather than having a hallway.
Right, and the hallway is very much a modern home thing. And I don't know if you an invention, if you want to call it that, because they obviously knew about them before, but because you can find them in Roman architecture, but of course people lose it. But they do also do because sometimes it does make sense to connect a room to a room, but also there's hallway. And so like to Oxford, I think it's great, but then it is so limited to scale and not being able to, whether it's automobiles or just more people moving around, that it needs a rebuild. But I don't want, and not that they're going to rebuild it, but to properly function, it needs a rebuild. But you don't have to rebuild it to a modern architectural style from an aesthetic point of view. And I wish, but move it into a more modern functional ability would be very nice.
Yes, you'll don't mention that anywhere where English Heritage can hear, because they will come after you with pitchforks for suggesting that.
Yeah, I'm sure they would.
They are the for our viewers outside of the UK. They're English Heritage are one of the groups that's responsible for some of our historic landmarks, and they tend to be quite zealous about enforcing our listed buildings, that you're not allowed to mess with too much.
Yeah, and I was a member of Scottish Heritage when I was living and visiting there on a routine basis. So, because you get free or cheaper, entry into historical sites. Yes. So yes, no, I know of the Scottish version of that very well, and know that you're right about that.
Yes, they do tend to they will. To be honest with them, they will be quite, if you're clever about how you do it, they'll let you get away with some things, but some things just no, especially not rebuilding all of Oxford so that it actually works with cars.
Well, and it's not, cars is definitely, me as a Californian, definitely see that as a thing, but also watching them walk around and move around, and just the scale of the rooms, the scale of the classrooms, the scale of all of that could be turned up a few degrees and would function much better. But I wouldn't want to lose the architectural style. Okay, now I think what we need, would be beneficial to do, is to see about buying this wheat farm so that we can make it grow a little bit faster. Can we afford to? Yes, I think we can, and I don't think we'll have anybody else bidding against us. Because right now it's supplying grain for everywhere. Okay, so we got that now. We want to at least increase that by 1. Let's see how much. It's a big chunk of budget, but it's
going to be worth it.
Yeah, it's because I'm bringing it down, and we just last few trains have left the warehouse, or some of them either empty or just 1 or 2 loads. Like this is just going to go out with 1, but at least we'll get that train coming down to Oxford.
Southampton has grown.
The importance of the railway with reference to traffic of commodities can't be argued away. And finally, the way to London is clear.
Okay, so we now have simply connect London up. We've got that. Okay, well, good. Now, can we?
You can now build down into London.
Yes.
Of course, if we're going to go with the they've put Big Ben there. That wasn't
Yeah, it wasn't there yet. So we
Yeah.
got that.
I've got that. Now, if we're going to do this historically, we're going to have to put our station on the edge of town, because you might be able to bribe the MPs and such into letting you build a railway, but you will not be able to bribe them into letting you build your railway right through the heart of London, right past all of their big expensive townhouses.
Right. That would probably be a real thing. Okay.
I need to bribe them that much.
Okay, I think that's our best bet for a large with signal control, and because we want to make this with the Southampton, Brighton, and Dover.
Dover
we want
especially in mind.
We want to, create a lot of trains going through there, and then a lot of trains coming down and in from Bath and whatnot into London. So.
Yes.
And then I don't know if we'll have enough space for another station there, so this may be our only one. Oh, we might get a second
should be able
one.
To put another one on the other side.
Let's just see for barely. If we
It'll
consider,
be tight, but it should.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll keep that in mind. Yeah. Let's connect
Up to London and see what our new set of goals are after we've done that.
Right. Okay. Let's. Can we do that side? Okay, we got Bath, Cardiff, Swansea, Hereford out that way that we might. Well, some of that would probably be more coming through Oxford, maybe. Definitely. Okay. So I think this side, because we can still, again, anything coming out from Cornwall, whatever, can come up, swing a little bit north, and come into this side of the station or that side there. Because I'm just looking for the future, and we might be able to get another station in here to go more directly up to there. Okay,
if you succeed in flourishing in the capital as well, it should help to overcome even the last resistance and to facilitate the construction of railways in the future considerably. In a metropolis like London, it could get quite confusing. The locomotive engines start to impede each other gradually. You could create some space and upgrade your train station with signalling control. The points operators will take care of the traffic so it runs more smoothly.
I think we've already done that. Okay. Okay, we need to reach population of 100,000 in London.
So by 1840, so we have got 7 years.
Yeah, I think it's more of an engineering task than a time task.
Yep. Well, to a certain extent, everything is engineering. To a certain extent, everything is logistics, which is, in a way, a subset of engineering. So.
Let's put another set of signals there. Okay, well. Now let's come from Oxford to London. Well, before we continue to buy, let's see if there's another engine we want to, or another thing before we do that. Okay, I think, well, we want to move to, okay, freight, that would be nice. 18.
Freight, that would be very nice, but that, that Derwent locomotive should probably be well, back out the left-hand side of the tech tree somewhere before you get to the rocket, in terms of its actual in terms of its place on the historical timeline.
Right. Okay. Well. Reliability of locomotives. Okay, we have 248 points in covered freight car. That would get us more money, but I'm always more wanting to do increase in business than increase in price per thing. So increase the number of passengers a year. Okay, let's do that. Let's do porters. Get porters running around our stations.
Yep.
Increase. No, let's come back over to technology, and I think let's increase our reliability by 12% with the detonators.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's well spent. Okay, Oxford to London, so that's going to happen here. Okay, and then let's put London to Oxford to get the reciprocal going. Oh, let's see what we can do here. Yeah, let's see if we can make this speedy and reliable. Oh, they don't like each other, so no, we won't do that. Let's put on a conductor. We'll ignore that it's a woman with purple hair.
As in the UK, we don't call them conductors. We refer to them as guards.
Guards.
He's sort of various, sort of comes out of being there to guard the train, both in terms of guarding the safety of the train as it travels along the line, and also to guard a freight train against things being fallen.
Okay, now that is not what a conductor does in America. A conductor is the person who deals with the passengers almost exclusively. At least is my understanding. Normally it's a he. He will deal with things like checking tickets, because they even to this day, you can generally get to the railway platform and next to the train without any sort of ticket check or barrier. So you can get onto a train without that. It's once the train is rolling, they will check the tickets. So he'll do that, and he will do any other sort of human personnel management, dealing with whether it's your help with the luggage or other sorts of thing. But his big job is sort of dealing with the humans riding on the train. So he conducts that. That is
We just call the ticket checkers ticket collectors.
Yeah, and I think to some degree, that is a massive part of their job. But with the scale of railway in America, where traditionally you had either full day or multi-day journeys on the railway, and so there was also porters on board. I think it would be porters, is what they would call them, and they would often be the people that would change over from a sleeping configuration to a sitting configuration, and not in different types of in classes of cars, that type of thing, and deal with that. So the conductor would be the guy in charge of all that, and the porters and other people on board the train would do things, whether it's working in your dining cars or other sorts of, like I say, a porter or somebody, often in America traditionally, in the past, the conductor would be white and the rest of your staff might, the porters would be black, because of the sort of social and racial classes that are going on. And that goes well into the 1950s, 1960s kind of thing. Now, with the downscaling of manpower, a lot of their job is down to ticket taking, but they had a lot more of a management dealing with that kind of function long term, because of the longer rail journeys as standard, I think, is where we find a difference.
With the sort of the American setup, because the journeys will take you a day or longer, American trains therefore sort of to a certain extent turn into hotels on wheels.
Yes.
And so
absolutely.
Your conductor is, sort of, to give more of an an idea of sort of what would fit for the job description would be sort of more like hotel staff management.
Yes,
In some ways.
and that is where they're coming off with this conductor, and just to sort of, again, it's a different scale and a different thing, but that within this role that's what this person is.
Yeah.
And so, and a lot of people, because a lot of trains will, have multiple stops, and so tickets at some point sort of get to be a long sort of receipt-like thing that they would punch at different stations, or different segments, because you might get, it would be between, oh, well, this is from, because you'll get this long thing that'll be like, let's say 6 cities or 6 stops or whatever, but the town cities. And so each time you go through, after you go through one, they would, punch it out so that you couldn't reuse that part of it, but you would buy this whole thing, and it may be cheaper to go from 6 cities away than to buy each little segment individually. But they would go around and make sure everybody has a ticket, and then punch it for that segment of the rail journey.
Yes,
that would be quite common.
We still we still have when you get your tickets checked on a train in Britain, they still come round and they've got a sort of, it doesn't punch a hole out anymore, but it sort of stamps into the ticket with a bit of an ink pad, sort of the date, so they know that was the date when it was used. And
Right.
sometimes they'll just I guess with sort of the downsizing and the lack of the sort of why buy expensive bespoke equipment when you can just instead just give the guy a pen and have him scribble on it, which does the same thing.
Now, is this supposed to be Windsor? I can't imagine what else, or is that the tower?
Like Windsor, and it's sort of the wrong side of London, and
or is that supposed to be, the Tower of London?
No, because the Tower of London should be back
over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what this is supposed to be.
Yeah, it might just be supposed to be a castle, but if there's one place where large still mostly standing castles should still be around in the British Isles at this time, would probably be somewhere in Wales.
Right. Yes.
In fact, first, if they'd put that in the sort of top left-hand corner of Wales, not quite in Anglesey, but just up there by Carnarvon, then that would be a pretty good match for what Carnarvon Castle probably would have been in its heyday.
The problem with I've been to Carnarvon Castle. The problem is this is a pre-Welsh castle, in that they would not have done any of the what is this, plaster and wattle and no, we're not buying that. Plaster, sort of wattle and daub type upper buildings here, that all that was built entirely out of stone by the time you're getting it to the Welsh castle building. What was it, Henry the whatever, that's doing all of that. So that's sort of a pre-Welsh castle, actually.
Yeah.
In look and style. Because all those occupation of Wales castles are all done to an original sort. I mean, I think it was mainly one architect who designed most of them, but they were all sort of post Crusades, or maybe the Crusades were still going on, but all designed coming out of the Crusades, and they were all real sort of pre-planned. Each one's different, but pre-planned, built, development done, as opposed to where a lot of castles were organically grown over the centuries. Add a wing here, stick out a new tower over there, update this, where they were just all built to a preset design, and that's sort of unique for the Wales, for castles around that. They were all done with that type setup.
Yes, because it was definitely just after the Crusades, because the if you look at Carnarvon Castle, you can see some sort of stripes of different coloured stone running around the curtain wall, and that was actually on purposely done as the king had just gotten back from the Crusades, and he'd been looking at the walls of Constantinople, and he'd seen similar sort of stripes running around them, and he sort of wanted to get an impression of that.
Now, my understanding is the reason for the stripes in the walls of Constantinople is because it's different building materials specifically for earthquake resistance. And different stones, and so they did that to be able to deal. Again, I can't cite my sources, but to be able to deal with some of the earthquakes in that part of the region and handle it. Where I don't know if that's the case for. I think it's more cosmetic for Wales.
For Wales, it was definitely cosmetic. It was definitely a case of the king had seen this over in Constantinople and was like, "Yeah, I want my castle to look like that."
And the Welsh castles are sort of the height of castle design in the pre-gunpowder world. And that's sort of it. Because if you look at, like, they'll have huge thick walls with long vertical slits all the way through them for at various angles that give just a very limited fire arc for your archers. But they're all set up, and it's really the military architecture is really integrated, and it's everything you could learn and develop for a pre-gunpowder castle, the last real big castle building programs before gunpowder comes in, and which starts to really change everything as that goes on, because you have a mix of archery and cannon, or early cannons to batter through the walls and whatnot.
Yeah. Right. Now, after that little aside, let's get back to railways.
Right. Oh, architecture does fascinate me.
Yes, it does.
Okay, let's look at some of our earlier towns and see how they're doing for needed goods. Okay, because if we get the first lower bit, at least have something in them, I'm reasonably satisfied. Okay, potatoes, or what they're called vegetables here, could be a little more distributed there. Some of these are town goods that we've yet to set up a production facility for, and I don't know that we're going to do that. Okay, they're getting potatoes here. They could use wood, probably more in terms of firewood, but yeah. Okay, they could use fish. Why we gotta investigate why they don't have any fish. Meat and vegetables. Okay. We do have our kipper special out here.
Flying kipper.
Yep, the flying kipper. Okay, well, let's see about another flying kipper. Okay, since we're still dealing with that, let's make sure it's on that track, which has the least traffic.
And let's that track, which has the traffic.
Okay, so that way, and let's get a John Bull running on that. Now, we have meat over here, but I don't know.
Do we need to increase production at source and maybe think about buying the fishing fleet?
We don't really have the money for that. Because we have a single source for the wheat, and it's a basic need everywhere, is why I felt we should spend the money for that. But I don't think we're going to do that just yet. We'll look in the future if they needed. Well, okay, they're doing lumbers while they're sort of out of logs. No, they got logs. Okay, logs, lumber. Who's out of, maybe it's Winchester here, Manchester. What they do? Okay, well, guess they got a load of logs in. Now, vegetables here. Let's see about
fairly easy to.
Yeah, now the question just comes is how do we do this? Do we want to put this here and connect up to that and then down to here? Do we want to put it on this?
Well, we're going to need to get them running into Manchester, aren't we?
Well, it always, and because, yes, there's one out here in Wales for vegetables. There's one south of London. So London's vegetables will probably be coming more from the south than up here. So,
Let's have a
yeah.
look at the current track work around
So we have
Manchester.
vegetables way out here. So I think, okay. Let's look at it. Okay, they got plenty of. No, they don't have enough citizens. Okay. Okay, they need more wheat, more fish. Fish just isn't a practical from over there. Would possibly coming from Wales eventually.
Oh, there's some in Anglesey.
Oh, out in Anglesey. Yeah, no, that has the problem. It's out in Anglesey.
Well, that gets us a chance to have some fun through the mountain.
Yeah, that's sort of the problem there. It's no, that's no longer limited to our connection. I don't know. I don't know if we want to do that just yet because we're still on a limited budget here.
Yeah.
Okay, but if what are they doing? I forget for vegetables. Yeah, they don't need any yet.
Don't need vegetables yet, so.
Yeah, but Liverpool, they're getting it via wagons. So here, well,
we could.
Actually, because getting to here would be.
And if we make a nice big track triangle, and then we can just take it north, and then plug it into the line that runs sort of east-west.
Yeah, that is where I think. Yes, I think you're right about that.
A nice, easy one to do.
Maybe you don't exist anymore. No, you still exist. Why can't I? Oh, there. Okay.
You might have to delete that extra signal that's still there.
Yeah, I'm trying to. No, I highlighted it once briefly. Oh, okay. There we are.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah, let's make sure that this is all in the right location here. Yeah. And that looks just barely long enough, so let's throw that there.
Because of course, I'm just looking at how many track triangles we've created, and I'm thinking, in a few about 100 years time or so, well, no, actually about maybe 150, 160 odd years time or so, when they start running steam specials after they've gotten rid of all the turntables, they'll have lots of track triangles to be able to turn the steam locomotives on.
Right.
As that's something that's often found today when they're running mainline steam specials, is finding somewhere where they can still turn the old steam locomotives around to put them back on to run. Take the train back.
Right.
And there are sometimes cases of them having to, go quite a bit out of their way to find somewhere to turn around and come back. Which means you get it does mean you get the glorious sight of a nice old steam locomotive running light engine for a little way through the countryside. We can find somewhere to turn around.
Okay, I think that's going to be best connection that way. Okay, now they are fully on track. We're on our track system. At least going in this direction. Which we can either connect down south or head west as needed.
And we can even then add another track triangle there going westward into Liverpool. Because I'm assuming they're going to start needing vegetables as well if they don't already.
Yeah, well, currently I think they're getting. Let's just check again. Okay, yeah, they're currently getting, though it may dry up because we may send everything on the trains.
Yeah, which is a thing we're going to have to worry about.
So we may, I don't know whether, we'll see about whether we create another track triangle that way maybe, or come straight west. We'll see. Okay, so from here to here. But before we do that, let's make sure you're accepting vegetables or potatoes.
Potato.
Right, and so here let's, oh yeah, we've got to make sure it's on the right.
We've got to change it over to one of the...
Why isn't it? Oh. What? Why isn't it letting me come to the other?
Let's have a check. Have we connected properly down here? Not going to...
Oh, I know why.
You haven't put any cross...
Yeah, points. I keep forgetting that because I'm used to playing with the stations with them already there. Okay. Well, that does make this a little bit shorter, but hopefully we'll still be able to do this. Okay, now that should open that up. Okay, there we go. Warehouse 7, we're going to move it to track 1. Okay,
yeah, there we go. That looks nice.
Yeah, okay, and they are accepting, yes. Okay, so that should be filled up.
Full load of potatoes, off we go.
Okay, now our goal still is to bring London up to standard, but I believe very much in trying to do this as part of a network and not just a single focus. Yes. Okay, we need wheat and we need fish into London. Now that is doable, but unfortunately, again, we're back to that we can't.
And we do have fish just to the
north, yes, northeast here. Okay, so we have fish northeast. We have wheat way out there. So whether our current wheat, which we could bring down to here either way. I didn't. We can. I did see we do have just barely the space to put it there that way, which we probably will build that eventually. But let's look at train station here. Okay,
it'd be good to get it in where we can.
Yeah, I'm just building this now, spending the money there. And let's build a warehouse, figuring that will be there, and we'll plan for that now. Let's go with a big warehouse. We can build that further away and still have it connected. How does that look? Will we be able to get over? If we go south, will we be able to get over these, bridge over these tracks without being too steep? We don't want to connect to the.
It might not hurt to connect to the apples.
No, well, what's really weird is it won't connect the apples to London.
That would be a problem.
So yeah, I would have thought so too, and it would just simply dump apples into the warehouse and then into London now. So that seems to be a design limitation.
Right.
In
that case, shall we try and get the warehouse as
as I'm thinking about this now, well, no, because all of the way this sort of system works is, well, because normally we go from warehouse to the goods, but maybe we'll be going through an app, because what you can do theoretically is say have this here and then I don't know, get this like pig farm connected to here, drive through a couple of warehouse stations with pigs in it, dump your pigs in London, and maybe pick up apples and then stop and dump apples in one of the other warehouses on the way back to your pig farm. So that might be a thing. Okay, so if we sort of go this way, like
I would
that.
say we should try and push it as far. If we're going on that sort of an angle, then I'm just thinking, make sure we can easily connect to the fish.
Because we can come. I think we can go. Out this way to the fish.
Right.
Connect that way to the fish. This way to the current network there.
Mm-hmm.
Down south over whatever we may do
Over the
there.
Thames, down in
Yeah.
towards
Yeah.
Brighton.
Okay. So this we may do another apple-based things.
At some point, Oxford's going to start demanding apples anyway. So.
Well, yeah, or maybe farther away, so we could
Yeah.
see about that. Okay, so let's sort of do this right about like that. Okay, and so okay, let's see here. Well, I think we can start. Okay, is that that's a little bit of an up. So let's lower that just a little bit, and then I know this. We're gonna come over here. We're gonna lower that. I know it's increasing expense, but we're gonna have to wait to buy this anyways. And we're gonna have to come down this hill, but I think that's about as gentle as we're gonna be able to get to come down that way to connect that up.
And then the other two tracks from Warehouse 11 are going to go over the London to Oxford main line and then continue southwards, presumably.
Yeah, this is to go that way to potentially head more straight south.
It should be enough to ramp up over there, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. Okay, well, we need to let the clock go to get a little more funds. Well, hold it. Let's see. Our current company situation. So we're going to buy some bonds.
We might as well, yes.
We're gonna buy as much bonds as we can get. Okay, so that way we can now expand.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're hooked into this network. We will, we'll also do apples here as well as just simply hook to the town.
Make sure we've got maintenance facilities as well,
Yeah.
yes.
Everything's going to be coming to London now. Okay, so, but London is still small. We need to get to 100,000. That is our goal.
Right.
I think that's very doable. So, but it's naturally getting enough overland, enough apples. But what we need to do is wheat, and so we're going to start at least with the wheat that's on our current system. We we have plenty since we've upgraded it. Plenty in.
Now, are we going to send it all the way around the system, or are we going to go?
For now, we're gonna go right through the because it's fairly direct. You can see
it's not that far out of the way. No.
Yeah, my biggest worry is the delays because that's a switching station, and that's a switching station, so there won't be much delays coming through the station. I don't think. No, so we will do that. We'll get that going. If
worst comes to worst, we can always build a bypass that cuts off the dog leg towards Warehouse 11 over in Oxford.
Right, now let's come here and let's do a train station. Can we get both of these? Yes, without having to go to a large train station. I think. Yeah, because we can swing north out to the west if we need to towards Cambridge.
Yeah, we can swing north to west to Cambridge, and we can bring this down along top of the River Thames and into our warehouse as well. Yes.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, that is exactly what I'm picturing too. Yes. Okay. Well, we may cut through this mountain. But if we don't have to too much.
I'll either cut through it or
because we need to swing around anyways. So
yeah.
Okay, let's look. Yeah, it's a little low here, so let's see if we can pick this up just a little bit. Okay, 2 and 2. Yeah, that's better.
That looks good. Yep.
Okay, yeah, that looks fairly good.
I'm guessing that fish is going to be fish that's been caught in the fens, because that sort of area is sort of very low lying and very marshy and very
Do you read much sort of old detective fiction, IKB?
Not a huge amount. I do am partial to watching a bit of Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot.
Yeah, well, I've watched all that. Yes. Have you ever watched the Lord Peter Wimsey series? Then.
No, but that does sound interesting.
Yeah. I always blank on people. Woman author, which a lot of them were. Wrote in the interwar period. She stopped writing sometime after World War II starts, even though people asked her to keep going. But I'm forgetting who. There's 2 series that cover at least most of the books. The first book never gets a movie or TV series. But you would probably enjoy it. Lord Peter Wimsey.
Wimsey.
And he had the family estate is, I think, out in the fens or something like that out there, or is maybe one of the things is set out there or something. I forget.
Yeah.
Because when you're saying low lying, it mentioned the fens, and I remember that for the description.
Yeah.
From the books and whatever.
That particular part of England is known for being. Well, it's sort of similar to Holland, because it's sort of more or less directly opposite it in terms of geography. So it's basically the little bit of Holland that we've got.
Right. Yes, I can see that readily.
Yeah.
Because there's Holland over there.
Yeah.
Just
and of course, if you there's a few other places where we've got sort of similar terrain on the sort of almost the opposite side of the country in Somerset levels that are actually mostly below seawater, well, below sea level at least, and at times in surprisingly recent history have been mostly underwater when they flooded. London Flying Kipper. Yes, he remembers.
Is that right for Kipper? I can't remember spelling. Yeah, okay. I don't eat fish. I mean, very little fish, so I'm not used to remembering fish names for food.
Yeah, whereas I
always got the chicken and chips at the chip shops instead of chicken and fish.
You never had a battered cod?
I don't know if I've ever had a battered cod. Like I say, now I've had stuff fried in the same stuff, obviously, because they're frying it in the same vat. But I don't know that I've had a battered cod. Not that I can't stand fish or anything. I just generally don't like it terribly much, so I don't normally order it or have it. So I don't know that I have. But I've eaten a lot of fish and chip shops to just get the chicken and chips. Is my standard order there.
Yeah.
As you can tell, yes, I have a fair amount of experience with Britain, but I'm not a Briton. But so I don't all of your traditions and all of your food likes. I don't. And you can examine the way Americans and British use knives and forks are different, and Britons basically eat with 2 knives, and that's the way, even though one of them is a fork, but that's the way they function. Where the American will have the fork in the left hand and the knife in the right hand, cut the meat or whatever, and then transfer the fork from the left to the right and to put it in their mouth. Where the Briton will not transfer it and will often, I know IKB knows how the British eat, but I'm explaining to everybody else, will, as I've watched a lot of them, they will put a little bit of each of the thing on the plate, often starting with the mashed potatoes down on the bottom, onto the fork. When we eat each item on the plate separate, maybe take a bite of one and then take a bite of another, not like fully eat one thing, but have just like have one thing, put it onto the fork into the mouth, where they will have the fork upside down, maybe start with the mashed potatoes or something, and then press on some or all of the different types of things on that plate, and then upside down put it into their mouth from their left hand instead, because we just eat that way differently, and it's different to sort of watch and examine, and I had done that, and I grew up not eating all of my food mashed together on the back of a fork.
Well, of course, if you've got mashed potatoes on your fork and you then mash the peas into the mashed potatoes, it stops the peas from rolling off your fork.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely it does. But it is... we just don't necessarily want to take a bite of, say, pea. We do eat peas here, but not to anywhere to the degree that Britain does. Peas are definitely a thing here, but like I say, it's not to that sort of. Oh, didn't get. There we go. Make sure you receive. Oh well. Oh, let's cancel that. Let's delete that and start over. If we do it before they've run any time, we get a full refund. And so we grew up with generally eating our food separated. They also need fish too, yes. London's already growing.
That's good. And I am now desperately trying to work out, as at some point, Gamer, we're gonna have to drag you back over to Britain again, so that you can try battered cod and chips.
Yeah, I'll try it. I'll give it a try. I know I generally like the chips and whatnot, and I lived in Edinburgh through a winter.
If you don't like it, I'll eat the battered cod, because
right.
I'm not saying no to that.
Right, and I lived through Edinburgh through a winter over there, and I definitely ate a lot more fried foods than I do here. But because I was doing a lot more walking and a lot more out of doors. In the cold, I think my body consumed it and used it more appropriately than if I did here in Southern California. So I remember when my good friend because I lived, it was less than 6 months, but I lived for a fair long time in Edinburgh through the winter. But come spring, actually for a business trip, he was coming over. We were sort of both working together on it, and we were going to go over to the continent. So he came over and stayed with me for a couple of weeks before we went on and over there. And he was shocked at how unaffected by the cold I was compared to him, and it was because I got acclimated to it through the fall into it, and was more used to being in a bit. And it's not, again, for people who are not maybe familiar with it, it's not as harsh like a New York winter or a Chicago winter, or somewhere like in Minnesota in America. It's not nearly as harsh a winter as that. It's something that I can readily tolerate being a Californian, but who don't want to go to like Chicago and have all this deep snow on the ground. And, it's, at least in Edinburgh when I was there, it would snow at night, and normally by noon the snow's gone. So it's telling you that it's no longer freezing by midday through most of the winter when I was there. And I visited other times that had been somewhat winter too. So it's not nearly as harsh of situation as it is in other parts of America. So it's tolerable, but I think more acclimated to it, being in it. And I think because eating more fried foods, my body could handle it a lot better, and walking and moving around so much, even though I had a car, but just still the idea of how far I have to walk from where I parked the car to wherever I was going because of the lack of parking places nearby, whether you're starting your journey or where you're going into the journey is always, so it's a lot more walking around. And that, but if I ate as much fried foods as I did in Britain, if I did that here in Southern California, it would be, in my opinion, unhealthy. And I think it's environmental and not genetic as to that. At least that's my appreciation of the situation.
Yes, I can attest to the fact, since I have an outside job on the railways. It does get very it does get, even in southern England, it does get surprisingly cold at night, quite late into the sort of what people would generally think of as early sort of early spring of late winter. There will still be it might be there will still end up being frost on the car at 4 or 5 in the morning, and by 7 or 8, when most people are up and out, getting ready to get in their car to go to work, it's already warmed up enough that the frost and the ice on the car has naturally melted. But when you're doing night shifts and you're leaving and you're getting back into the yard at maybe 4, half 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, and there'll still be frost on the car that would under natural circumstances, if left on its own, would be gone by 7 or 8, when most people who work 9 to 5 are getting up. But you would it does even recently now, we've just sort of come to the end of a bit of a mini heat wave in England, and it's gone from being basically summer temperatures back down to being comfortable in the sun, but in the shade, especially when the wind picks up, it's gone to being actually quite chilly.
Now, Britain is interesting that, again, from my experience, the latitude is not. It doesn't really seem to be a major factor in the temperature. It is something of a factor, but because up here you have, and it's more up here, you have the Gulf current coming in and slamming into Britain up here, and you also have the other weather sort of patterns coming that way too, because I remember being up in, let's see, we're probably almost literally right around here, and watching the waves of cloud just come in. That there would be clouds, sun, clouds, sun, clouds, sun. Clouds meant rain, and so it would rain for like half an hour, and then it would be sunny, and then it would rain for half an hour. Yeah. So it's all coming in off there, and it's coming.
Sounds like typical British weather.
Yeah, but you could readily see it, and it was. You say that, but I was dealing with a sort of a historical photo shoot that I was somewhat liaisoning for, and there was this English photographer that was sent up to do that, and it was raining, starting to rain, and he goes, "Well, we ought to pack it all in," and I just pointed out there, look out there, and I think this is Glen Shiel. Look out there, you can see there's sunlight, clouds, sunlight, clouds. So if we just wait 20 or 30 minutes, it'll be sunny again, and you can take your photos. Oh, okay. And so it's really more apparent because of the Gulf Stream coming through here than it is in other parts of Britain, because it really was the idea in the West Highlands, it's going to rain that day. Now, it might rain for half an hour, or it might rain for 6 hours during the day, but it's like raining for an hour, then it's maybe sunny or maybe just cloudy, and then it's going to rain again. And it's not like it's just going to rain almost every day, but it's not going to necessarily be a rainy day in which it's mostly rain. It may be mostly sun, or a lot of the day is sun, but that is just sort of the wave of water coming in, and probably it's that way. I have not visited the west coast of Ireland, but it's probably something like that. But it is much more so than, say, in Edinburgh, where I actually lived, that it's more, a typical situation that either it may be rainy that day or it may be sunny or cloudy or whatever, but it's sort of for the full day. But it's just different up here in the West Highlands.
Yeah. When I was when I went to visit Edinburgh to visit my cousins, they did tell us if you can see the mountains, it's going to rain. If you can't see the mountains, it's raining already.
Yes. And so, it does vary on where you are, and so this amount of latitude here in many parts of the world can determine greatly the weather patterns, as in cold or hot, but it's not as big a shift as it is in other parts of the world because of the Gulf Stream hitting. And because if you go over to Norway or Germany over here, it's a lot colder because particularly Scotland, but the British Isles have broken up that weather pattern, the Gulf Stream pattern, coming over into there, and it's a lot colder because of that.
Yeah, and we do have
Okay, so we've now got Peterborough.
Peterborough connected.
Yeah, into the network, and let's get a reciprocal from here to here.
And then Peterborough, and then depending on where we go from there, maybe use that as being a way to skip past Nottingham and then go straight up and use that to build the East Coast main line up to Hull and then eventually up onto Edinburgh.
Yeah, that would work.
As that would be the traditional sort of Flying Scotsman route, as it were.
Right.
Everyone knows the Flying Scotsman. I think even it's saying Flying Scotsman is actually listed as being the most famous train in the world, basically, because it seems everyone knows it.
I think you would have been right until the more recent time period, and then I think it's the Hogwarts Express or something, and even I
probably
that.
I think before
which doesn't exist,
J.K.
obviously.
Rowling came along.
Yeah.
I have my own thoughts and opinions on the Hogwarts Express, but mostly positive. But
right. Okay, so let's see. We want to. We can always lower the elevation there. Or raise the elevation as it may need to be. I know we need to lower it because okay.
That's a big 13% grade.
Yeah, no, we're going to come down to.
That's much better.
Yeah, 2%. That's good. I just where it would be better to go a little over here, but I don't think we want to connect quite as close to the bridge as that.
Oh, that's.
Well, maybe we can.
Yes.
Let's see if we were to move this. Yeah.
We get that 5% down a bit.
Let's see. Yes, we can. Yes, actually.
There we go.
That's better. Yeah, I think even being that close. Yeah, that'll do it.
Hasn't moved the problem further back down the line, has it? No. That's good.
We got trying to keep that 2% or less as much as possible. Yep. I think that's mostly a 1 or a 0. Yeah, Britain needs to, or British Rail or whatever. Is there still a thing called British Rail?
They think they technically still exist, but sort of as a holding company for bits of infrastructure that aren't actually like bridges that no longer have rail on them because they've been the tracks have been removed long ago, and it's just
right. Because that was definitely the.
At the time you visited, it would probably still have been British Rail, but British Rail is now British Rail is now, in terms of actually having anything to do with running the trains, is now gone.
Right.
And it's now been the entire system has now been denationalised for a process of privatisation that sort of it went a bit strange, because instead of doing the sort of obvious thing of just going, okay, let's sort of essentially resurrect the big four railway companies that we previously had, where you essentially had two running the routes north and south between London and Scotland to compete that way, and two running the east-west routes from London out to the sort of West Country and back, really. But instead of resurrecting that and giving the companies that ran the trains direct control over the track, so it was their track, and if they needed to change things with it, they could, they instead decided to basically keep the infrastructure nationalized and then franchise out to private companies to run the trains, who would then basically pay a fee for being allowed to use the track. And I think it was sort of, there is some suggestion that it was very much sort of sort of like late 80s, early 90s thinking about it, in terms of having different companies having contracts with each other, so that instead of having to have the entire thing being part of several big companies, they were sort of trying to think of ways to break it up, so it would be theoretically at least easier for there to be competition between different train companies. But that of course didn't really end up happening, because you sell the franchise for a particular route or set of routes, and then because of the way trains work, you don't get that much direct competition, because there is no longer in the UK the incredible mass of extra railway lines and extra stations that were initially built back when we had 150 odd railway companies all competing.
Right.
Because a lot of that got rationalized and gotten rid of, and the bits that weren't profitable were essentially torn up. So there's a lot of
well, I think it would be profitable, if one or more of, because that train they use, and know it more from the Jacobite term, is the Jacobite. It's one of the Highland trains that they use in the movies for the Hogwarts Express.
That train route out that way, the sort of Cardiff branch and all of that.
I think it would be profitable from a tourist standpoint, that if you were to have a few somewhat old style but effective but steam engine trains around Britain, that I think there would be plenty, once you get some of your problems sorted in Britain, bunch of tourist dollars coming in for people to take rides on a bit more traditional.
There is very much that. There is a thriving industry of heritage steam lines, and there is quite a lot of mainline steam tours.
Okay, so there is
across the country. There is definitely that, and it is profitable.
Yeah, and and whether something would be a daily service or like a weekly service, maybe, like once a week between, like you say, the Flying Scotsman or something like that, from like London to Edinburgh on a steam train or something that you would be able to take.
They tend to do London to Edinburgh is a bit difficult to do with a steam train at the moment because they no longer have water troughs to pick up water on the fly. You need to have a auxiliary tender to do that.
Yeah,
you basically run out of water. But there are definitely sort of, steam. There is definitely still steam on the main line doing rail tours for tourists and such. And it does make money, but it is also even the much more modern steam locomotives that they've got access to are still by again talking about the sort of levels of efficiency that people expect and the levels of reliability that people expect, they are an awful lot more efficient than the trains of the 1830s, but compared to modern diesels and electrics, they are there is the risk of the risk of you turning up for the train thinking it's going to be a steam train and finding out that the steam train's not working today, so they've had to stick a diesel on the front instead, or they've had to find a different steam locomotive at the last minute. Because
now, is that because they're just old?
To a certain extent, it's because they're just old, and it's the fact that there's there is even though we do have a lot of preserved steam locomotives in working order in the United Kingdom, and there is the fact that only a certain number of those are certified for running on the actual the big railway, as we call it, on the mainline network.
Right.
And out of that, a lot of them there is also the fact that obviously back in the day they had a lot more of a any particular sort of they had a lot more express locomotives, just because after the end of steam an awful lot were just outright scrapped because no one could see a future use for them. So they've got a much smaller pool of of locomotives to draw from.
Mm-hmm.
And there are certain other limitations, because there are sort of depending on how long of a train you're pulling, you're going to have requirements for a minimum amount of power to keep that train moving at a reasonable speed over the national network, so that it can keep to its allotted time slots for places.
Yeah, no, you definitely have to have it the speed going so that it doesn't slow everything else down. And being a steam engine is definitely part of it, but it's also being, as I would say, do older style carriages. That even if they're new manufacture, but just make sure that there's
a lot of the old sort of like the last set of carriages that were built when steam locomotives were still in use are still it's reasonably easy to retrofit them with that they'll match if not exactly fit to, it's reasonably easy to get them grandfathered into the safety things, on the grounds that they're not going to be doing all mainline speed, because steam locomotives in the UK for the most part are limited to 75 miles per hour.
Right.
There's a few that have gotten permission to go faster, but that's been on a one's got sort of hoping to get permission to go faster, but on a regular basis, but that's only because it's an entirely newly built locomotive.
Right.
Because it
And
was...
I don't know all the economics of it, but I know there would be many Americans that would definitely take a steam train journey of some sort along And I don't mean because there are small little railways, because like I said, I was on some little thing in Snowdon or whatever, but I mean between cities as a major sort of thing, that they would definitely do it. That if you build, that, and I don't know what the cost of building new steam engines would be, but if you were, and there may be some technology that just isn't readily available to do that today that is required to, but the long-term thing would I think be profitable to do, to build some new stuff, but in the old style.
There are definitely new builds. There is, if you our viewers, if you look up Tornado, the locomotive, that was an entirely new built mainline steam locomotive in the UK. I think they finished building it in 2008, and that's been running around the network ever since, visiting steam railways and doing mainline specials. And there are several other projects underway to essentially fill in some of the gaps in the collection of surviving steam locomotives that we've got, where in some cases whole classes of certain types of locomotives, we don't have a physical representation of them, because that entire class got scrapped,
right?
And such, or there are some that are there are definitely some programs out there that are looking to build and are building new steam locomotives from scratch.
Right. And I some of the precursor technologies or manufacturing capabilities may be missing, but
they did have to go to Germany to get the boiler for Tornado, because steam, especially in East Germany, stayed around a lot longer, and so some of the manufacturing capabilities were still in existence and could be used.
Right. And that type of thing might be a difficulty in getting it off the ground, but I do think it would be good. Well, I think it's time to end this episode. It's been very enjoyable talking with you, IKB, and I hope everybody else has enjoyed this. So I want to thank everyone for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe and say goodnight, IKB.
Bye, everyone. Good night.
And so subscribe, like, comment, ask questions. We love hearing from you. See you next time for more railway talk and railway design. See you then.